In the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night, in the heart of the night, this world will burn bright. We will set it alight. In the heart of the night. Hello everyone, I am Anthropomantic Fiend and I do horror-related things on the internet. It's the day after Christmas and I hope everyone got a lot of wonderful things. I got a lot of great movies that I've been wanting to own for a while. So, of course, what do I do on the day after Christmas? I don't watch any of them. I end up rewatching this movie to do this review, which is Zombie Dearest. It is a zombie comedy movie that came out in 2009. There are definitely good zombie comedies out there. I don't know if I'd say that this is one, though. It follows this guy who is a failed stand-up comedian. He has attempted to go get this stand-up job and failed miserably, so he goes out drinking with one of his wife's friends and thinks that she wants to have an affair with him, but she doesn't. His wife finds out and everything goes horribly wrong. She moves away to the country, to an old house where she used to live, and he tries to move in with her and ends up doing so, but they're both pretty bitter at each other, and a rat gets caught in a mousetrap in their house, and the wife decides to flush it down the toilet. Their names are Gus and Deborah, by the way, but she flushes it down the toilet, which clogs up their plumbing. They call in a plumber to pull that out. He's gonna help him, but he gets in a really stupid argument with Gus, who has a penchant for screwing up every single social interaction that he's in, so he just leaves. I don't really know how this works, so I don't know if it's connected or not, but he ends up having to dig something up. I think it's their pipes, having to dig something up out in the yard because they've been having to fix up this old house themselves and not doing a great job of it. While he's digging, he reaches his hand down into the dirt and it's starting to rain, and he just goes, "Please, I just want one little break. One break for Gus, for me." And as he does that, this zombie rises out of the grave, and this is Quinto, who used to be some kind of day laborer, I suppose. He's been buried in the backyard. Rather than just killing him, which he initially decides to do, Gus figures out that Quinto is highly impressionable and will do most things that he's told, so starts making him dig, and then starts, as you do with a zombie who can no longer feel human emotions, testing out his comedy act on him. He actually has to teach Quinto how to laugh, which he does terribly. He tries to hide Quinto from his wife, and things just get more and more screwed up from there, essentially. So that's the plot of the movie. The plot's fairly decent, actually. I can't say this is a really great movie, either. For one thing, I didn't really like Gus. He's a terrible comedian, which is kind of the joke. I just don't totally want to listen to his terrible jokes all the time. He has this whole stand-up bit about knowing in a past life how he was the first caveman, and he was the one who decided to go into the caves, and far less successful was
Out in the Open Man.
And it's just really, really stupid stuff. Kind of funny, but not really. I'll get back to acting and characters in a minute. The soundtrack is actually pretty good. It actually sounds a fair amount like a legit horror soundtrack in places. It's very ambient. It can be synthy. There's a children's choir singing in places. That's cool. Actually, I think it's just one child, but it sounds good. But it'll also change to suit the mood. There's rock elements and a lot of just little country and alt rock songs just thrown in there in places that they were kind of fun. Camera work and the editing, it's all very standard movie stuff. It feels professional and well done, although the camera quality on this movie's not great. It's not the best looking movie. And then the zombie makeup for Quinto is pretty good. And then the pacing of the movie is, I'm not a fan. It's a good while before we actually get any of Quinto, which is half the fun of the movie. It's just a lot of really uncomfortable comedy before that. This movie relies a lot on just uncomfortable situations for its comedy, which I don't always find very funny. They've been done better in other places anyway, but I could tell they were trying. I don't know. It's just kind of meh for me. And the acting's not the best I've seen in the world either. Again, not terrible. It's all kind of very mid-tier. There are really good comedy bits in there places. One of my favorites is at the beginning of the movie when they're hearing noises downstairs and they're not sure what to do about it, and they're like, get the flashlights. But all they have are these like little flashlights that you have to squeeze to keep the light on. He's just like, great, I'll just sneak up on him, and he's going around the house squeezing his little flashlight. I didn't like Gus. I didn't like Deborah that much. Frankly, all of the characters are kind of jerks in this movie, except Quinto, and he's a zombie. It just doesn't feel like it's got a lot of heart, and it was too much comedy and not enough zombie for me, and the comedy wasn't that great. If you're looking for a good zombie comedy, everybody tends to go to Shaun of the Dead, so I definitely probably watched that over this. Probably something like that, or Anna and the Apocalypse, or I'm gonna be doing another zombie comedy movie. This review is the next to last movie in the 30 Nightmare Movies box set that I've been basing all of my reviews on since I started the channel. So I've got one more review of that, and then I'm going to move on to something else. So the last one's also a zombie comedy, and I definitely think it's better than this movie, but there's some fun stuff to be had in this movie as well. Most of that's in the spoiler section, but overall, I'd say it's really not worth it to go out of your way to look for this movie, but it's kind of fun. This movie definitely gets a solid meh from me. With that said, here are the spoilers for the movie. So, there's a zombie buried in their backyard, and we don't really know why, except there are these weird little flashbacks that we get when Deborah comes back to the house, because it's her old house, and she's like seeing herself as a child, but not from her point of view. It's very strange. But she sees her waving to her aunt, who's like putting a pie on the windowsill, and in the background, you see her uncle burying a guy in the backyard. Then it flashes back, and she's understandably freaked out by this, but then she doesn't really bring it up again. But yeah, we just sort of figure out that her uncle, who still lives in town, kind of hated Quinto's guts while he was alive, and just sort of killed him and buried him in the backyard. So that's really his story. And the reason he has come back alive is pretty stupid too. Deborah is asking Gus what he was doing when Quinto came out of the ground, and he just sort of goes, yeah, I just sort of wished for a break, and then there was Quinto, and it was just like, were you touching him? And it was just like, what is that supposed to mean? She just recites this thing that she heard from, it's either her mom or her grandmother or her aunt when she was alive, who's just like, she heard this rhyme from her when she was a kid, which is, witch's wort and demon's mole, you get one wish on a dead man's pole. So he's got his hands in the dirt and he makes a wish. You can infer what that means from there. That's why he comes back to life. It's the dumbest thing in the world, and I can't decide if that's amazing or really, really just unnecessarily dumb. It's probably both. Quinto kind of refuses to leave them in any particular situation. He walks out in front of their car and gets hit. This is before they actually know that he's a zombie, and Gus is just like, just leave him alone. He'll walk it off, because he can, because he's a zombie. And, of course, Deborah's just freaking out. But then he walks into their house during one of their particularly intimate moments, and they freak out, and Gus goes out of the room to fight him, and he gets bitten, and he starts to gradually zombify for the rest of the movie. His wife has been working for a former boyfriend of hers, while Gus is at home just working on the house, and he obviously still has a crush on her and wants to be with her, and she's just kind of wants the job. She starts talking to him about how something's come between her and Gus, this other guy, and he thinks it's him. He's like, okay, you want to talk about it? And we'll go to your house. And they get there. Gus is still with Quinto even after this horrible incident, and she freaks out and she's like, there, that's the guy. And he is upset. All of them are in this very awkward space, so Gus and Deborah just go inside and start having this argument with each other. This is probably my favorite scene in the movie. It's done in one shot. They're arguing inside, and outside through the window you can see this guy, Donnie, going over to Quinto's grave and fighting with him and just hitting him with a shovel, almost getting eaten several times, and then running out to his car. Quinto follows him carrying the shovel, and then we find out that Donnie dies in a car accident. Then following that, they try to get rid of Quinto multiple times, unsuccessfully. They try dropping him from an extreme height. That doesn't work. They plan to shoot his head off, but they find him holding this little flower, and they don't have the heart to shoot him, so they just hang him on this hook in the middle of nowhere. And meanwhile, Gus has set up his own comedy barn, and he passes out ads for this, is sticking them on people's cars at Donnie's funeral, which is of course horrible, but you know, comedy. They all come to his show, and he's like really bad at this point. He's almost totally zombified, but he wants to do this very last thing before he dies. So he starts his comedy bit, and Quinto has somehow escaped and is back in the room, and he tries all these comedy bits that we've heard throughout the movie, all of which are terrible, and the only person laughing in the room is Quinto. And then he just gets more and more worn down and unable to function as his act progresses, and then he goes into full zombie mode for a split second on stage and then collapses. He tries to pass it off as part of the show, and then everybody starts laughing. It's kind of funny, but more than anything, it's just really kind of sad. They're sitting out in the car. He tells Deborah, I'm dying, I'm gonna be completely gone now. And then the last thing he managed to get out is run. And then he collapses, and then he comes back as full zombie, and then like the last few minutes of the movie are like a legit zombie apocalypse scenario. She runs into the house and boards herself up in different rooms, is trying to escape. She walks in on her uncle, who is getting eaten by Quinto, and the gore effects are really good. She boards herself up in a closet, and then they break in. She remembers the rhyme again and grabs Gus and wishes that none of it had ever happened, and it goes back to the very beginning of the movie when he thinks he's going to be having an affair with his wife's friend, and he just goes, what am I doing? Decides not to go through with it. So none of it ever happened. So that's kind of how the movie ends. Wasn't terribly impressed with it. Definitely better movies out there, but definitely far, far worse. It was decent enough. I admired the effort, but it wasn't really my thing. I wasn't really in the mood for a comedy with horror elements to it. If there had been more horror in there too, if it had been more of a 50-50 horror and comedy, I probably would have been more on board with it. It's decent enough. I don't think it's worth going out of your way to look for, but it's a decent movie. So that's Zombie Dearest. So I'll have one more 30 Nightmare Movies review, and then I hope to do a recap of those. This might actually be my final video of 2019. I'm not sure. I'm thinking I might do a video on my favorite albums that came out this year, but I'm not totally sure. Thank you for watching. I hope you'll check out more of my videos. Thank you for checking out this one, and hopefully I'll see you in another video. Thank you for watching. Bye.